All right, the guy is working his face off, getting things done, and Ted, I appreciate that you slipped us in. It's Senator Ted Cruz, the Republican senator for the great state of Texas. How are you?
Joe, good afternoon. Good to be with you.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you along for the ride. I was just talking about, as soon as you called in, Devin Nunes stepping aside from the I guess, Ted, we're calling it Russian meddling in our election now because the left knew that saying Russia hacked our election was absolutely factually inaccurate. How do you feel about Devin Nunes getting out of the way? You hadn't heard my show. I'll let you know what I think. Not that it matters as far as what you think, but I think he should have had intestinal fortitude, stuck to his guns, and said, no, I'm not going to step aside because you want me to. Where are you on this?
Well, look, I understand the reason that he decided to step aside and recuse himself. When you've got an investigation that is ongoing, and there were accusations that he was that he went to the White House and briefed them before briefing the committee, those are accusations that I think naturally cause concern within the committee. And to have a fair investigation, you need to have both impartiality and the appearance of impartiality, and so I think it was a reasonable decision for him to make.
What's interesting is those who wanted him out of the way now get Trey Gowdy. I don't know that they wanted that. I got to be honest with you. I think they probably want Devin Nunes back.
Well, that could well be, and I think it is important that we have serious and thorough investigations, the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee, and that they be fair and that we get to the bottom of what happened. And it's worth underscoring, part of what is alleged to have happened are the allegations of wiretapping of senior members of the Trump campaign. And at this point, it's unclear what the facts are, but there needs to be a serious and thorough investigation. And I think it's important that those investigating have credibility and not be perceived as having their thumb on the scale in any direction.
Former Republican candidate for president and, of course, Republican senator for the great state of Texas, Ted Cruz. Ted, to that end, and I want to finish up with Nunes. I also want to get Susan Rice in here a bit. And then, of course, we have to talk about Neil Gorsuch, which is a huge story today. Yeah. But when it comes to what you just said about the Trump transition team and members of the incoming administration being monitored or surveilled or wiretapping, whatever the term is that we're using, you had Susan Rice, who was the national security advisor for President Obama, who we know lied her face off when it came to Libya and the videotape. We know she lied 5 times that morning. Hillary Clinton sent an email to her own daughter saying we knew that it was terrorism the night it happened. This woman now, a week and a half ago, went on PBS and said, I don't know anything about unmasking people. I don't know anything about surveilling anybody. I don't know anything about phone calls and who was being monitored. And then 2 days ago, she went on MSNBC and said, yeah, I called for it, but it was all legal and it was all righteous. And of course I have the right to do that. Where are you on this whole thing, and what do you think is going to happen with Susan Rice? She's got to come and answer the music, doesn't she?
Well, I think absolutely. I think it's important that she testify in Congress, and I think the initial facts do not look good. If it was the case that she unmasked American citizens who were wiretapped by the U.S. government and that she did so for political and partisan reasons, then that is a very, very serious offense. It potentially raises serious criminal liability. And at a minimum, it raises the specter of abuse of power of the Obama administration using the national security apparatus to advance partisan political ends and attack and undermine the next president. I hope those are not the facts at the end of the day, because that undermines trust in our government. Neither side, neither party should do that to the other. But these allegations are very serious, and Susan Rice needs to come before Congress and the American people and answer very direct questions about what she did, what she knew, and why she did what she did.
And her allegation is that she unmasked the name or asked for the name to be unmasked because it's part of a larger investigation that everybody has to know who was on the phone call and what they were saying. That may be true investigatively. It wouldn't be a breach of law. But if her unmasking led to somebody leaking it, you and I know that leak itself to the media was a felony. If we find out that for the purposes of getting it to the media somehow, that's why she did the unmasking, would the felony fall on her or on the person who actually leaked it?
Well, it depends on what the actual conduct was. But if there was surveillance that either directly or indirectly brought in U.S. citizens, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA all have very strict protections required by law to protect the privacy of U.S. citizens. Now, the National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, is not an investigator. It's not the job of the National Security Advisor to produce intelligence reports. Rather, the National Security Advisor is a consumer of intelligence reports. And so it raises the obvious question, if she did indeed disregard the laws protecting the privacy of U.S. citizens and did so specifically targeting senior advisors to the new president, that raises a very strong inference that it was done for political reasons, and that should trouble us all. But at the same time, Joe, she deserves a chance to defend herself. She deserves a chance to explain what the facts were. We should not we should not act based on suspicion and innuendo. We should look to the specific facts. But these allegations are very serious, and I think that the Congress and the American people deserve a thorough investigation and clear answers.
It's U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican, the great state of Texas. Let's talk about Neil Gorsuch. It turns out he doesn't like truck drivers, and he plagiarizes people. Ted, that's all they had, man. That's all they could bring to the table, and it didn't work, thankfully. But when you saw the attacks on a guy that you have huge respect for, and you and I talked about this, you came out and backed the then nominee Donald Trump because you liked, and in fact, you really liked his list of potential Supreme Court nominees. So this guy's name was on the list. You have great respect for him. We've talked about it. How is it that in 10 years' time, the Democrats thought they could go from unanimously supporting him to acting like he was evil on earth?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, Joe. This was a major factor in the last election. It was the reason that millions of conservatives came out and voted because of this vacancy, because control of the Supreme Court. And as you know, with Donald Trump, it was the price of my support for Donald Trump in the election was his committing to a list of 21 potential nominees and promising to nominate from that list. That's where Neil Gorsuch came from, and that was the direct fruit of that promise, which was important and I think critical to Trump beating Hillary Clinton in November. Judge Gorsuch, going through the hearings, as you know, I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, was very active in those hearings. We saw the Democrats just flailing around with one desperate attack after another, none of which had any grounding, none of which had any substance. But the reason for those attacks and the reason for the Democrats' unprecedented partisan filibuster of Judge Gorsuch today is that Senate Democrats are scared. They're scared of the radical left, of their base that is threatening to primary any Democrat that does anything other than oppose Trump across the board. And it's a sad day for the Senate to see Democrats engage in such rabid partisanship, and I think it undermines the institution. It's not good for the country.
It's Senator Ted Cruz. Ted, the people listening and watching across the country right now are begging an answer to this question. How do you possibly keep a straight face sitting so closely to Al Franken? How is that? Those questions were nuts. My 8-year-old daughter said, Dad, just to let you know I can ask better questions. But it's like he's Stuart Smalley and every character he's ever played on SNL as he sits there. I mean, he acts like Judge Gorsuch, truck driver. This whole thing that he puts on, and I love how you smack him back with fact and with reality. But I mean, it's almost like some sort of a weird show. What is he doing?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, what all the Senate Democrats are doing is you put your finger on it. They're putting on a show. Right. And it's a show for the radical left. I had about a month ago, a colleague of mine who's a fairly liberal Democrat in the Senate, he told me, he said, listen, you got to understand, we are terrified of being primaried. We're not worried about the general election. We're afraid of our base who is so angry that we have to oppose Trump on everything. That's the reality. And so at the hearings, Senator Franken and the rest of the Democrats, you could see them grasping at straws because the radical left was demanding that they attack Judge Gorsuch, and there was nothing in his record to attack. So they were just, I still remember, when I was questioning him, I asked him about his practice in Colorado of every year taking his law clerks to the rodeo. And he talked about mutton busting, and the kids. I always enjoy the mutton busting at the Houston rodeo, where the 5- and 6-year-old kids get tossed in the air. Mm-hmm. And it was hysterical seeing PETA get mad at him online and tweets saying, you know, that's just cruel to the sheep. Now, listen, anyone who's ever watched mutton busting, it might be cruel to the 5-year-olds, but the sheep are doing just fine.
They are. It's Senator Ted Cruz. And I got Senator, it has gotten just completely nutso. It's gotten ridiculous. I'm glad that you guys used Harry Reid's rules change. And it looks like Neil Gorsuch will be on the Supreme Court. Yes. It's funny, as you tweeted out, and as I tweeted out that you're coming on the program, a guy tweeted to me and you, and he said, a cheater? Why would you want a cheater on the show? He changed the rules to cheat. And I said, and my response was, Harry Reid is not coming on the show today. If Harry Reid doesn't do that a few years ago, what was it, 2013? Do you guys in the Senate even have this choice today? I mean, he opened the road, didn't he?
Look, that's exactly right, that Harry Reid is the one who first exercised the nuclear option. But, you know, Pags, it's worth stepping back a little bit and looking at this with some historical context. For the first 2 centuries of this country, the standard in the Senate for confirming executive branch nominees and judicial nominees, including Supreme Court nominees, was 51 votes. It was a majority. Right. That changed. The judicial filibuster was largely the invention of Chuck Schumer in 2001. In 2001, George W. Bush became president, and Chuck Schumer, working with the radical left, said, let's start filibustering judges. That had not happened before, and Chuck Schumer invented it. And until today, there had never been a partisan filibuster of a Supreme Court justice in history. And so here's an easy example. And
they're proud of it somehow, Ted. They're proud of it. It's ridiculous.
Here's an easy example. We all remember the nomination of Clarence Thomas. Now, Justice Thomas has become, in my opinion, one of the greatest justices to ever serve on the Supreme Court. Agreed. But when he was nominated, his nomination was very controversial. The left was completely up in arms. Clarence Thomas was confirmed to the court with 52 votes. Not a single Democrat demanded a 60-vote threshold. Ted Kennedy could have tried to insist upon it, but not a single Democrat did, because you didn't filibuster Supreme Court justices.
And I remember Joe Biden sitting on that panel and questioning Clarence Thomas. I remember that like it was yesterday. It's Senator Ted Cruz. Ted, less than a minute. I know that you're very, very busy. Obamacare, is it going to go away? Will it be repealed or replaced this year? I know it's a complicated question, but the first, try at it didn't work so well. What's going to happen? Will it be this year? Will it be next year? How do you feel about getting it done?
I hope and pray the answer is yes. I believe failure is not an option. For 6 years, we have promised the American people, if you elect us, we will repeal Obamacare. Pags, I'll tell you, I am working night and day, meeting with senators, House members, the president, the vice president, the administration, trying to bring people together. I believe we can get it done. Repeal Obamacare. And I'll tell you, the test for success will be driving down the cost of premiums so that Texans and Americans across the country, so we can afford quality health care.
All right, it's Senator Ted Cruz. Ted, I always appreciate the time. Next time you're in the area, let's stop by and say hello, okay?
Good, we'll do it. Thank you, my friend.
I always appreciate Senator Ted Cruz stopping by. Your thoughts on that? 1-800-383